This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully you've been ringing in the new year and you're ready to go. I know that the NBA is ready to go because literally all these teams are just completely wilding out, trying to jockey for position, get themselves in a good space as we start getting a little bit closer to the NBA All-Star Weekend. And when that mark hits, that we're pretty much more than half of the season left remaining. And so it's an exciting time if you are an NBA follower, because there are races to be had in both the Eastern and Western conferences, respectively. Let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What's good, Mr. Shaw? How did you enjoy your New Year's?
It was a chill, brother, but anxious to get back on the mic here and talk about all the news that is happening in the NBA. A pretty significant development since the time we last spoke. Something that we've been kind of keeping tabs on here for the majority part of the season, ironically, but it's going to be an exciting one here, man. And, as a Celtics fan, proudly to see a certain team having some struggles. Can't say that I'm all that sad overall, but it's an exciting time.
You're savagery already, bro. No, you don't need to be savage like this already.
No savage. I'm going to keep it a buck all times in 2025.
Okay, I get you. I'm just saying that, like, your savage is like ruthless savage because it's subtle savage, right? Subtle savagery is the worst, right? Like, because you can love and have so much respect and you can revere someone, but then you also say to yourself, do I really want to mess with this? Like, do I really want to deal with all of that? You know what I'm saying? Because when it hits you, it hits hard, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I like that though. I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt. Subtle savagery. Yeah.
Subtle savagery. Exactly.
Yeah, I've been getting some interesting comments here on our YouTubes and things of that nature. And so, you are actually the beloved one of the two of us are on the show. People always like, I like that, what that guy said. Me, they're always like, that guy, da-da-da-da. Or, even my reality stone thing, the guys told me I needed a reality check. So I'm just going to keep the vibes going here in 2025.
Well, listen, my goal was to go and get therapy, but if I'm going to get this, if I'm going to get this kind of positive affirmation, I might hold off.
You are beloved. You are beloved, my brother. You are beloved.
That for 2025, but we'll see what happens by the end of 2025. See what happens in 2026. So, if everybody has been paying attention to what's been going on in the NBA newswire, the situation with Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat has left a lot on the table for us to pick at, to gnaw at, and to digest. So we are definitely going to kind of dig in a little bit more on the situation that is happening down in Miami. And, like, as we always do, we like to try and pay attention to trends. You know what I'm saying? And again, Sean and myself, we always like to meld our generation of culture and music. So if people remember, there was a group back in the day called Trends of Culture. I thought that was a dope name for a group, right? Just Trends of Culture. Come on, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of stuff. Leaders of the new school, Trends of Culture. Well, anyway, these dudes came up with a track called Off and On. This was their coming out track. You know what I'm saying? I know a lot of people slept on it, probably didn't recognize it. Were these guys as talented as leaders of the new school? Obviously, you're talking about Charlie Brown, Dinko D, and obviously the legendary Busta Rhymes. Of course not, but because of their underling energy that they provided in that track, it had me thinking, we need to start paying attention to the trends that are going on in the NBA. So we're going to do a little Trends of Culture right now in the NBA in this show, looking at teams that are on the up, and teams that are on the down. So a lot of stuff to get into. And as always, we appreciate our listeners. Once again, we appreciate everybody hopping on board with this. Be sure to get my man Shaw, Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at Game Face Lee. The show's Twitter handle, NBA Baseline. Available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. Go to www.thebaselinenba.com to not only check out this episode, but also all of our other archived episodes as well, too. And if you catch us on the YouTube channel, we say hello and Happy New Year's to you and yours. The blue and white logo you see locked on, that's the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group, be running these content streets. So if you want to check us and also our family of content creators, go to www.19mediagroup.com in order to check out the family of great content creators out there, whether it's music, culture, politics, entertainment, sports, you name it. 19 Media Group has got it. So we encourage you guys, head out to the website. It's something for your listening pleasure. So before we get into the gist, the jus of what's been going on in Miami, we just want to make sure that you guys are fully aware that it is the new year, right? And that in the new year, basketball season is what it is, right? Basketball season is heating up, and Prize Picks is the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed when you use the promo CLNS. That's C as in Charlie, L as in Larry, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts and is available in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. For more convenience, Prize Picks now also offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Prize Picks is truly the best way to win real money, and with all the various opportunities to play and collect your winnings. Sean and I are hoop heads with different strategies. Me, I like defense, so maybe I'll take Wemby to get blocks, to get more than 2 blocks. Sean might pick Tatum because, he's a Celtic lover too, and he'll pick him to score maybe more than 25. So you essentially can mix and match your playing strategies based on personal preferences due to the enormous selection of players and the stat types available. And for those who love a quick win, Prize Picks is the way to go. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Remember, at Prize Picks, it's as simple as picking more or picking less. Again, the promo code CLNS to get $50 after you play your first $5 lineup. The baseline is rocking with Prize Picks, and you should too. Prize Picks, run your game. Coming up, Sean and I talk about Jimmy Butler and Miami Heat. Don't go anywhere. We're back. Cal Lee Warrenshaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And the big topic of conversation has been what's been transpiring essentially over the last 72 hours regarding the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler. Now, if people have been following what's been happening, there were reports Jimmy Butler had requested for a trade. He no longer feels like his time, he basically feels his time is up with the Miami Heat. Let's just, keep it 100, okay? The Miami Heat as an organization, the Miami Heat culture, as my man Shaw, who has witnessed and has been around that in his, years of being able to be at media events and being down there in the heart of Miami, being around what happens with the organization, a very, very well-disciplined, and at the end of the day, the final word comes out of Pat Riley's mouth, right? And nobody basically pushes Pat Riley to make a decision. Ultimately, Pat Riley wants to make that decision. And that is from the head all the way down. And everyone falls in line accordingly, okay? And we all know this. It's what's made the Miami Heat an enigma, so to speak, in the success. And also what people might say is the shortfalls of an organization like Miami. So with that being said, Shaw, what did we make of the fact that we first heard the reports that Jimmy Butler wants out? Does it surprise you that he does want out? Even when we were saying in the beginning of the year, something has got to give, and the likelihood his time is up in Miami as far as that relationship goes and what the expectations are for both him as a player and also for what the organization was asking of him.
Yeah, I'm somewhat surprised in terms of how sour it's gotten and how public it's gotten. Never in recent history, we've never seen a team outwardly make a statement, right? Rumors happen in the NBA all the time, but they never make a statement. We are not trading Jimmy Butler, only for 8 days later to reverse course and say, well, his representatives have indicated that they no longer want to be a part of this organization. So we will we'll work on trade options. There is something just something immense happening here that doesn't quite make sense. I don't know what exactly transpired between Butler and really what I'd say is Pat Riley, specifically to change and change course in this vast direction. They've frayed in a way that the Heat organization in some ways now is becoming kind of known for. And that starts, I think, with, Paul Pierce made some comments about Riley. Shaq said something on TNT the other day as well, too. Like, listen, you can't really beef with Riley. Once you get on his bad side, it's kind of done deal. It's donezo. And for whatever reason, Butler and Riley are on, opposite sides of the conversation here. And now we seem to be heading towards a pseudo messy divorce because the odds are not in Miami's favor to kind of make a deal when a player knows he is making this type of stuff. Now you suspended him for 7 games. Players Association has gotten involved. It's really, really ugly, really, really messy. And I actually need a true Heat representative to inform us of what happened here, what really went down, or why this got so nasty so quickly.
So let me ask you this question real quick, Shaw. Are you more into the nuances of what triggered this nastiness? I don't want to use the word. Let me not use the word nastiness. The differences that now is, now surfacing clearly between Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat organization, or are you more into, well, what does this say about the Miami Heat and what is taking place? Because I want to keep this basketball, obviously, until we actually get someone who can speak to those things that are going on. The Miami Heat are still an above 500 team. The Miami Heat essentially have managed to play above 500 basketball really without getting the best effort of Jimmy Butler. I don't care what anybody tells me. What the comments that Jimmy Butler made on his volition in front of that microphone about saying, I want the joy back in playing basketball, this, that, and the third. I don't care who you are. We all go through this. We go through our struggles and whatever our profession is. And clearly when we are not feeling like we want to do something, you're not giving 100% to it. You're giving only what you can basically give at that moment in time, right? Because then the follow-up is, are you working out afterwards? Are you, doing all of the things necessary in order to maintain your body, to give the commitment to not just the profession that you're playing, but also to the team that is committed to paying you to go out there and pay that profession? There's a difficulty in all of that. So I just think, to me, where I'm concerned more than anything else is the mentality of what Jimmy Butler is alluding to about his whole approach to what has been going on since the beginning of this year. Because I think, to what you're saying, Shaw, I think the Miami Heat is going to be fine. I think if we're talking about a business perspective, the Miami Heat is only going to be able to get what they can get. But if you're another organization thinking about getting Jimmy Butler, if this is the way that Jimmy Butler handled this situation, what are you actually inheriting if you're rolling the dice to go ahead and bring him into your organization, right? Like we were saying, we're all gung-ho about the Golden State Warriors making a play on this. What exactly are you bringing in, knowing that Jimmy Butler now has made this kind of admission publicly, given the circumstances of what the Miami Heat and him have going on?
Well, the conversation is so vast. It screams all things can be true. Does Jimmy Butler have a shelf life everywhere he goes? Yes. Does Pat Riley have an ego? Yes. Right. So are those two things colliding at the same time? Absolutely. So to me, that's what's so interesting about the overall situation, because I think all parties are right and all parties are wrong at the same time based on how they're going about this. Our earlier conversation on the Jimmy Butler trade, when it first kind of came about, or the request, or whatever Shams was reporting at the time, that Bernie Lee vehemently denied. Now it looks kind of crazy to kind of go in public and said all of that. But I said point blank, I said, listen,
let's also say this real quick, Shaw. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let's also say this. I am sick and tired of agents coming out of their mouth and saying stuff, only knowing that the backlash from it then now makes you less credible.
He looks crazy. He looks crazy. He looks absolutely crazy. Okay. But I remember saying point blank, he said, listen, the Heat are pretty much good with or without Jimmy Butler, and they will figure it out. And as you so eloquently put before, this is still above 500 team. They're still one of the better teams in three-point shooting, decent defensive rating. They've improved their offense vastly from a year ago. So, I mean, that's Spo kind of doing what Spo does, with whatever the sum of the parts are. And if they're able to make a splash here now, or not necessarily make a splash, but make a trade that benefits them for the short term and long term, great. I think Miami will ultimately still be fine. However, if you take a comment like what Paul Pierce has said, is like, well, if this is how they treat their superstars, jacked up statues and all with Dwayne Wade now, even after the fact, like, it's just really, really strange. Like, why as a superstar would you want to come to this organization? Because it always, not to say always, but it often ends in a kind of a messy divorce. And I think right now we're having that Riley being kind of a little bit older and definitely ownery is coming into play. Well, I mean, it's appropriate, I think, for this situation. But Jimmy himself always seems to wear his welcome out in whatever city or organization that he's in. And that, I think, is it's going to hinder, I think, a potential trade, finding a partner that's like, all right, well, listen, now he's 35. Now he's going to want, $55 million a year, older side, a guy who has, again, a clear shelf life. Do we want to be in the Jimmy Butler business? And I think there's going to be teams hard pressed to say yes to that question.
Look, we have always been a fan of Jimmy Butler, right? We've been a fan of his work ethic, his heart, his hustle, his grit. But I also want to point out something. I also want to point out something I think is kind of interesting here. The reason why we talk about Jimmy Butler in this iteration of what's going on with the Miami Heat is essentially for the 2 NBA Finals appearances, right? We don't necessarily talk about whether or not Jimmy Butler has played at an MVP-like level from the beginning to the end of the year. He shows up during the playoffs, right? Jimmy Butler, it becomes literally playoff Jimmy when playoff time happens, or when the Miami Heat need a stretch of games to position themselves to get into the playoffs, right? So I just want to make sure people are understanding what's being realistically discussed here, because if you're executives, right, what are you bringing Jimmy Butler in for? Are you bringing Jimmy Butler in because you believe that he is the best fit for the group of talent that you will have left, or whatever it is that you're probably making a move to bring him on to, in order for you to be a championship caliber team? Or are you bringing him in because you want playoff Jimmy? You know what I'm saying? And that's something that you can't unstick. Like, once you roll the dice on this, you have to be committed, and your organization has to be positioned to allow playoff Jimmy to be playoff Jimmy, because you're not going to get Jimmy to somehow change it up and become something that he clearly has not shown you that he wants to be during his tenure with the Miami Heat. Now, we can play around with this all we want to, Shaw. The fact of the matter is that by even that premise itself, we have limited now maybe to what? 2, 3, maybe teams? Like, Jimmy Butler is mentioning a bunch of teams that he's willing to go to, but I can guarantee you this. It ain't going to fly like how he's trying to pull this nonsense off playing for the Houston Rockets. Yeah. It ain't going to fly like he's going to try to pull this nonsense off playing with the Golden State Warriors. You know what I'm saying? Just simply because of how this is coming off, like how this is being laid out. And look, at some point we're going to have this conversation about Joel Embiid. That's another conversation for another day. It's kind of ironic that those two guys are still brohamming how you regretted the day that they did that, didn't. And I'm sitting there saying, are you sure, Joel? Are you sure that you're willing to tolerate what you've been seeing from Jimmy Butler over the last 3-5 years because of that?
Well, let's even table that for a quick second and get into some other aspects of, like, the part you're just saying, like, who might even make sense. Because if you go back and take Riley's ego into this, there's little to no chance he'll be traded to an Eastern Conference team.
Right.
There's little chance that happens.
Especially for how this all went down.
Yeah. I mean, and now if Butler's relinquished and saying, I just want out of Miami, yes, I have my preference list, but I just want to get out. So does that open up other teams and options? And maybe it does if you're an Eastern Conference team. Like, I mean, if it was Washington or Charlotte for whatever reason, maybe. But do they have even parts that Miami would want back? I think it just limits the playing field. So I'm going to take the Eastern Conference pretty much out of it. You mentioned Houston, you mentioned Golden State. Golden State's now dealing with the Kuminga injury. Don't know how long he's going to be out. High ankle sprain potentially, right? Houston and Udoka and team. Does that make sense? Yes, he's from the area. But who are you giving up? I mean, does Jalen Green go out in that? We know it's not Şengün, so I'm not really sure. But the mystery team that I think a lot of people are running to the trade machine now is saying, okay, well, maybe they have a lot of depth, a lot of parts. Maybe this works, is now Memphis. And I'm intrigued by that I don't know if it's a great fit, but I'm intrigued by the conversation because I think they have enough depth where they can afford to do some semblance of consolidation, and they don't have all the restrictions of second apron going up against them as well too. But they're not going to give up Bane. They're obviously not giving up Ja as well too. So can you make something work with whatever the rest of those parts are to make sense? And I don't know. I mean, Marcus Smart and some other guys are going to be involved in something like that. But I think Memphis makes some sense, and Denver as a potential. And that's going to come at the cost of your favorite Michael Porter Jr.
Right. Okay. So I just want to go to the Memphis part first. Do you think Butler can rock with Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr.? Right? Like I'm curious if you think that the temperament, the mentality, the owneryness, the ego of Jimmy Butler, because we've seen him do this when he was in Minnesota, right? Young, up and coming guys. And listen, Shaw, the fatal flaw in this is the Memphis Grizzlies are damn good, right? I'm we had that talkish abandon ship. I'm abandoning ship real quick on my previous prediction about how down I am on the Memphis Grizzlies. I was not expecting the ability for the Memphis Grizzlies to look this good, even without Ja Morant being at 100%. But clearly his presence has made that team really significantly good. Do you shake this up after seeing what you're seeing without even the necessity of having a Jimmy Butler on there? He's going to help make that team that significantly better? Or we're saying, to what I was saying earlier, they're doing it because they want playoff Jimmy next to Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr.?
I think that's the latter part is what you're going at. And because they have so much depth that, if they can entice Miami with draft picks, and I ultimately think a deal gets very complicated, like third team might ultimately need to be involved, right. I think, in some of this as well. But, I don't know if there's a straight one for, two-team deal with Memphis and Miami alone. But I think Marcus Smart, again, is probably at the not the center, but a big part of whatever that trade looks like. Then you got to add additional salary because they're not going to trade Jaren Jackson, they're not going to trade Bane, and they're not going to trade Morant, right? Maybe Edie or something like that too. Maybe they could be, convinced at that. But I think you're right in terms of playoff Jimmy is what a team like Memphis would be looking at and could potentially do that to consolidate some of the assets that they have. But they're very deep. They're very good. They were looking to make a minor move, right? They were in the conversation for Dorian Finney-Smith, just a week ago too. Jimmy would be a significant move, not a minor move in some ways, but might be able to propel them. But I think you look at a team like that, they're going to be hesitant to disrupt their found chemistry, right? And especially coming off of a down year. So that's what makes Memphis maybe not as good as an option, but a potential option nonetheless. I think a team like Denver makes the most sense. That in terms of what their need is, if they can find the parts in essence to make it happen. And Dallas is going to sniff around as well too, but it probably costs them Clay, and that that just looks weird from a PR standpoint. Not that they wouldn't do it, but there's that. And then I think Phoenix. But if you're Phoenix, like you're kind of trading one injury problem for another. Although Butler is a better representative of that, obviously leading two teams in the NBA Finals, but Beal would have to waive his no trade clause in essence to make that happen. So there's a lot of teams, in the Western Conference that could sniff around the possibilities. But I don't know that Miami loves any of those options for them, especially given the fact that he does have 1 year left, but they could lose him for nothing if he chooses to opt out.
Yeah, there's two snags to what you were saying before, Shaw, which is probably the reason why I'm leaning more to the idea that if there's a team that I think would probably be better suited to have a Jimmy Butler on their team, it would be the Denver Nuggets. Because I don't think it's a question of whether or not, if the Denver Nuggets get to the playoffs, they need that extra aggressive player and player that knows how to play winning basketball without having the ball in his hands. Yeah. I think the problem that the Nuggets run into more than anything when they get to the playoffs is the ball definitely has to go through Jokic, but then somehow when you need something from Murray or Porter and neither one of them are clicking, it just all falls off. And they don't play winning basketball unless somehow the ball's got to be in their hands during that time of the season. I think if you can take one of those away and complement those other two players with a Jimmy Butler, because Jimmy Butler is the kind of guy where he can find his way to doing and making winning basketball plays for a team that struggles to do that in the playoffs. To me, that would be the best fit. I'm glad you brought that up, because when you're bringing up teams like the Phoenix Suns and others like that, it's very interesting on what they're giving up to get. And to me, that's even as higher a risk than what they did initially to bring the kind of players that they have on their rosters to begin with.
Yeah.
Your turn to the base.
Sorry. Well, before we close out, I just want to say this. Watch these teams as a potential facilitator in Jimmy Butler talks, because they also need to make moves. The Chicago Bulls, the Portland Trail Blazers, and the New Orleans Pelicans. I think those teams specifically can all, and maybe even Utah, but I think the aforementioned teams all have stuff that they kind of need to do to reset the proverbial table, especially New Orleans, thinking about whatever they're doing with Brandon Ingram. He wants to be out of here. Does Ingram get rerouted to Miami in some semblance of a Jimmy Butler trade? I think those are teams that can really help and assist, facilitate if there isn't a one-to-one kind of trade scenario for Miami with a team out there. Sorry.
Yeah, man, this is so good. This is so good. So I'm so glad, we're having this kind of conversation, and again, we have to keep our eyes open. Don't be paying attention, to the drama of what's being said. Watch what they're doing. Watch how they operate. I think is the best thing to say to address what's going on between the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warnshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, time to do a little off and on trends of culture happening in the NBA. We dig down on some teams that are on the ups and some teams that are on the down. But first, are you craving nonstop hoops action? NBA League Pass is your ticket to the ultimate basketball experience. Enjoy live games, on-demand replays, and exclusive behind-the-scenes content across a variety of devices. With NBA League Pass, you'll get more. More games. We're talking regular season and select playoff matchups. More features, including multi-view angles, in-depth stats, and behind-the-scenes stories. More access. Catch your favorite teams and players anytime, anywhere. Stay up with the NBA like The Baseline does. League Pass is for fans who live the game. Sign up now and type link.nba.com/LP19MG. That's link.nba.com/LP19MG. More Baseline, Callie Warnshaw. Don't go anywhere. Time to do a little trends of culture, baby paw. Callie Warnshaw, Baseline NBA podcast, man. So let's talk about some trends that are happening right now. If people have not been paying attention, there are two teams that are running roughshod, or as our man Jeff Saturday from ESPN says so eloquently, teams getting boat raced when they go up against them. The Cleveland Cavaliers, who essentially are winners of 9 straight, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, winners of 14 straight, Shaw. What stands out to you when we're looking at this type of trend about the Cavs and about the Thunders, respectively?
Yeah, they do. They look like world beaters. Technically, OKC did lose, I guess, because they lost in the NBA Cup, but it doesn't count towards our regular season record. So, whatever, semantics.
Yeah, that's kind of that's kind of like when I do connections on New York Times and stuff, right? Like, I didn't get it, so it's like, oh yeah, they want to start over. I was like, but yeah, or you miss a day. I'm sorry, you miss a day when you do the New York Times thing. It's like, yeah, but you're resetting me, but technically, I didn't lose. I just didn't get a chance to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah. But there's no doubt this Oklahoma City Thunder team is they're world beaters, and they still don't have home ground. And so to get a significant piece like that to come back, sometime in February or even early March, just says to me everything I need to know about this organization and the way Sam Presti has organized this team. They are primed, ready, and they want to win an NBA championship this season. And then Cleveland, every time I look up, I'm like, they're going to lose tonight. No, like you said, they boat race teams. They're out west, or they were out west, just a couple days ago, and they won all those games as well. They don't seem to have any flaws, and that's not necessarily from their X's and O's standpoint. It's really from their team chemistry standpoint. When everybody's playing the proverbial role, and what I've been most impressed with Cleveland specifically is watching how that hierarchy oscillates from game to game. Sometimes it's Mobley, sometimes it's Garland, sometimes it's Donovan Mitchell. In OKC, it's always SGA. So that's the difference there. And, because they play such suffocating defense is how they continue to win. But Cleveland's trajectory is one that none of us saw coming. Kenny Atkinson is the runaway coach of the year, I think, right now, despite what Dagnall is doing in OKC. These two teams seem to be headed on a collision course. And I think that spells trouble for the rest of the teams in the NBA.
Yeah, one thing I want to make mention of is these two teams, Cavs and the OKC Thunder. They actually play this week.
Yeah,
OKC
Thunder, for sure.
Yeah, so I am definitely looking forward to that game. I think it's a Wednesday night game. Cavs, they're actually OKC is traveling to Cleveland in order to play. And I think now should be the time that people really start paying attention to what we're seeing between these two teams, because from a matchup standpoint, they're very similar, right? They're able to get away with playing a small lineup, essentially. Obviously a little bit taller, and lankier, but they don't have like the girth. However, where the teams are going to thrive or shine, so to speak, when we're talking about OKC and we're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, are what their role players are essentially doing and contributing to. And you can clearly see Atkinson, Dagnall clearly can reach into their bag whenever they need to and basically put out on the floor whatever matchups they're countering against whoever the opposition is. And I think I love that. So this week is going to be a very interesting week. There's a stretch of games OKC has got against Eastern Conference teams. They play the Celtics, the Cavs, and the Knicks all this week. But I'm more so focused about the Cleveland Cavaliers because I want to see, is the Cleveland Cavaliers clearly for real against one of the better teams in the Western Conference like they are, a legit team like OKC, and is OKC's win total adding up, just continuing to show how deep and how like deadly they truly have been. Because to your point, Shaw, the only blemish on their record was the loss, that L that they took against the Milwaukee Bucks, where they just clearly did not look like they were out there executing the way that they've been able to execute during their 14-game winning streak. So it'll be interesting to see how they play against each other this week.
Yeah, I agree. And I just a couple of quick things on Cleveland. I think I'm more impressed with them overall, just because I didn't see them coming. But offensively, they seem to be unstoppable. They are shooting 40% from three, as a team, while on their fifth in total attempts, they're shooting 43s a game and shooting at 40%. The Cavs, I'm not looking at this team and thinking knockdown shooters, but they've done what Boston has done and put it on 1,000. They are better at it than Boston is currently, and that's not something I expect. In addition to the fact that they don't turn the ball over, and they're one of the leading teams in pace. So third in turnovers, I think fifth or sixth in terms of pace, while shooting all these threes, and they're also second in 2-point percentage when they do shoot twos. So this team, they're first in 2-point percentage when they shoot twos. They're just an offensive juggernaut that I just did not expect to see.
I think to what you're saying, Shaw, like, we become concerned with the fact that it's an all or nothing deal with the Boston Celtics and the propensity of threes that they're shooting, right? But I think what's more dangerous about what we're seeing from the Cleveland Cavaliers is they're shooting 10 less threes essentially per game than the Boston Celtics, and yet shoot equally as high a percentage, which to me kind of spells that some of the key shooters that the Celtics have could be tired legs. It could be other teams now are figuring out how to, D up and force,
it's a matter of streakiness, and even, as you alluded to many times, the quality of the looks, right? Are you getting open looks off of, consistent ball movement, which we have seen Boston do many times, but sometimes it's, dribble, step back, and kind of a loss, as opposed to where Cleveland is consistently whipping the ball around and hunting, some of the better shots. And then you have a good tough shot maker in Donovan Mitchell, who can bail you out at times. Again, I'm gonna leave you with this: 40% from the 3-point line, 58% when they shoot twos in general. First in terms of those percentages, in terms of their offense. Cleveland is a juggernaut.
Yeah, they are. And the only thing that you can hope for, if we're talking about the Celtics to repeat as champions, right, is the Celtics have to make sure that they are as equally sound in their ability to score in the perimeter, to score those 2-point baskets, rather than only relying, again, on their propensity to be able to shoot the 3-ball the way that they like to shoot the 3-ball all the time. Like, sometimes a team is going to take that away from you. You got to be able to hit them twos when the opportunity presents itself. And I know that they're heavily depending on Kristaps Porzingis, but they need that from their other players as well, too. It was why we lauded the depth of this team come last year, because they could always get those guys to get those type of shots when the 3-ball was not working for them. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and talk about another trend taking place now. It's the teams that are taking some L's, right? Hornets, Suns, Mavs, all of them. The L's look a lot larger on their foreheads right about now than maybe people are paying attention to. Hornets, losers of 9 straight. The Dallas Mavericks, losers of 4 straight. The Phoenix Suns, since Christmas Day, losers of 4 straight. Whose L seems to be the scarlet letter burnt in their forehead harder between the 3 teams that I just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think of teams we're expecting to be competitive. Both Dallas and Phoenix are those teams. Dallas, you can pseudo excuse because Luka's been out, so they're finding some sledding to be a little bit tough with Luka out of the fold. Kyrie been in a little bit in our lineup. Then they had the fight, and PJ Washington and Najee Marshall got suspended. So there's reasons behind that. Phoenix, similar situation with Booker being out. He just came back, but they lost that game, I think, to Indiana. So Phoenix, you feel like, okay, they should probably be able to right the ship faster, since now all their guys are air quote back, while Luka's going to be out still another, 3+ weeks potentially. And I think from the Charlotte standpoint, we know this isn't a good basketball team. And LaMelo and Brandon Miller are also in and out of the lineup, and they're currently out again as we're recording. So to me, Phoenix has the best path to snapping this losing streak and righting their ship quicker. But at the same time, they still haven't looked like a team that, we wanted them to look like coming into this. We had them in our upper tier echelon as a team that could be competing for a Western Conference championship. It's not really looking that way right now. And it goes back to our earlier segment. Hey, if they can get Bradley Beal to say, I'm ready to get out of here, and they can make the Jimmy Butler deal or another deal of similar ilk, then maybe they can turn this season around. But I'm a little concerned about them, but they have the best path to changing their losing ways in the short term.
I think the team that concerns me more than anything, Charles, the Phoenix Suns. At first, I agree with you with regards to the Dallas Mavericks and the Charlotte Hornets. I think maybe I was leaning more to the Charlotte Hornets because it just feels like, man, it feels like a train wreck. And I don't know if again, Charles Lee is, it's his first year, so I don't know, kind of what to make of. He had something kind of going in, the first week or 2 of the season, and then like it's just kind of gone off the rails. Like some of the losses that they've taken are just really ugly losses. So I guess I need to get more of a sample size. And it just doesn't help when, the team just taking L's left and right, right? I think what surprises me when I talk about the Dallas Mavericks, Shaw, is like right now in the conference, they're 14-12, right? Which, given the circumstances, is okay, but that's still kind of concerning, only because, with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving being both in and out of the lineup, I think it speaks more to the lack of development or the lack of, and I know PJ Washington has also been out of the lineup as well too. But even now with PJ back, even now with Derek Lively back, I'm not seeing the ascension, right? The next step, right? We thought that PJ coming back home, this is probably what he needed. Now we're actually going to be able to see what, clearly was not evident in his struggles when he was a Charlotte Hornet. I'm not seeing it. I'm still not seeing where he's such a vital person. Like he's that third person. You know what I mean? And so the concern here is the Oklahoma City Thunder seems to have exactly who they need to position themselves to be where they need to be. The Houston Rockets seem to be positioned even without an upside to Jalen Green. They know what they can bring to the table with Sengun and company. The Grizzlies, right? Not having John Morant, yet they still look like a formidable team. Jaren Jackson Jr. has taken a step forward, right, for the kind of player that he is and is willing to shoulder that team and move them forward as best as possible. You know what you got with the Nuggets? And then we'll always talk about a team like the Lakers or maybe even the Warriors. It just concerns me when I look at the Dallas Mavericks that we're still trying to figure out who's going to help, who's going to supplement Irving and Doncic, or is it really going to be about those same 2 dudes carrying this team miraculously through the playoffs when that time presents itself? And I don't know if you can get away with doing that, knowing that the teams that I just mentioned a moment ago have significantly not just improved their roster, but you have seen significant improvements by the players on the roster a year removed.
I think it's a valid point. When you look at Dallas, you do get concerned, I think, at times whether or not, okay, are they just 2-star reliant? And I guess that's why they're sniffing around a guy like Jimmy Butler and some others. The Clay experiments has gone okay, right? But he's not carrying the offense in a way. And this is what we talked about when Luka went down. It's like, all right, is Clay going to be able to step back into a role where he can get you 18 to 22 a game? And that hasn't really borne any fruit, I think, as of yet. So Dallas is concerning. we think that in some ways that they'll be able to turn it back on. We haven't seen that same level of defense that they're playing toward the latter part of last year consistently this year at all. So if they can get that back and get Luka back in tow, then maybe they make a run. But right now, it's interesting. It's an interesting watch for the Mavericks. Despite all the talent that they have in this roster, they seem to still be in the need to accumulate more talent, which should be concerning for a team that went to the NBA Finals just a season ago.
Absolutely. You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Continue our conversation on trends of culture. The Sacramento Kings. Have they quieted the noise, Shaw? Was it actually the right play to let go Mike Brown the way that it was done? Because the Sacramento Kings now are winners of 3 straight. Clearly, Doug Christie, he's putting his imprint on this. He's like, hey, I don't want that interim tag on me if I'm getting these guys to play up. Is this the medicine the Sacramento Kings needed for them to actually look like a basketball team that should be play-in, playoff worthy?
I think it's a little bit of like, that burst that people get when something new has happened. So all of a sudden now it's like, now you point to, that was it. Mike Brown was a problem. They played well, right? And yes, they did. They've beaten, Dallas, Philadelphia, and Memphis, the last 3 games. And those are, to a lesser degree, obviously Philadelphia, not a good team record-wise, but those are 3 pretty quality wins, especially with the way Embiid is now playing in Philadelphia. And that's the game they actually had to come back. And that to me was their most impressive game because they had to come back in the fourth quarter, to get that one. DeRozan has looked slightly better. He's averaging about 20 and 4 since in the 3 games that Mike Brown has been fired. I'm not ready to hitch my wagon to, this is a true trend, for the Sacramento Kings, but I will say that I'm impressed with what Doug Christie's been able to do in the short term. They still have a lot of defensive deficiencies that they need to ultimately solve and figure out. And I don't know that another move is still not going to be coming here to Sacramento, but good in the short term. I don't know how that's going to be long term.
Yeah. Listen, kudos to Doug Christie. He's got these guys at least playing inspired basketball. Yeah. Whether or not it's going to translate to be winning basketball, only time will tell. But if I'm the Sacramento Kings, as far as from a executive perspective, Shaw, I would hope that they don't try to do anything unless it's absolutely necessary from a team building standpoint, monetary standpoint, that certain, like, you need to move players in order to shed salary to, keep yourself under a specific tier or something like that. This needs to be proving time, I think, for De'Aaron Fox and for Domantas Sabonis. I think if you really want whoever the coach is going to be, whether it's Christie or they move on with somebody looking for somebody else in the offseason, if you legitimately want to put a team in the scope of trying to be competitive and win in the Western Conference, they need to legitimately look at what these 2 guys are doing together and say, this is our absolute future. I'm not saying that the Kings totally have gotten it wrong. I'm just saying the move to have brought DeMar DeRozan onto that squad and to give up some of the pieces that they've had over the last couple of years, I don't think has proven them well as far as the makeup and the chemistry of the team. And it's certainly not elevated neither Fox or Sabonis in a particular position where we're making it sound like, okay, this should be the new, triple threat in the Pacific Division, let alone the conference that people need to be paying attention to. I think if you really want to buy into that, they got to invest more on the idea that they think that they are that dynamic duo and that they should be getting a third person only because those 2 guys are making that team essentially better.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say in Sacramento, the barometer for me is going to be also the play of Keegan Murray, in the Doug Christie era. Do we get a better version of him, both offensively and defensively? That's a little bit more consistent. So again, great for the first in the short term here. Let's see if it continues here going into trade deadline in February and so forth and so forth. Sacramento, they're still 3 games below 500 and, out of the play-in as we currently record.
Absolutely. And finally, Shaw, let's talk about your team, the Los Angeles Clippers, right? Yeah. That team that you gifted them with the reality stone. I don't know if they've been using it yet. Somehow they found the soul stone because Kawhi Leonard returned and they won. Right? So what are we talking about here? Right? Like, is all fixed? Is all well? Or should we really, really make sure that they use that stone, reality stone, before the season ends so they get a grip on what's going on right now with where they are? I mean, they're still playing worthy, Shaw. So,
Yeah, I mean, and they are what, a game or half a game out of first in the Pacific Division, so 2015, they haven't played bad basketball. I think Zoo has been amazing to watch, getting a role to be kind of more featured within their offense, and Norman Powell just saying, hey, bro, I could always do this. Like, they're playing well, and we know Ty Lue is one of the better coaches in the NBA. I'm just still resonant to believe that this is a championship level team, and we're going to get Kawhi is going to come back, and everyone's going to get all, starry-eyed and hopeful. And that is one of the league's worst trends, I think, right now, is consistent faith that this Clippers team is going to figure it out. And, the way serendipity works, that this will be the day they do figure it out, because we're supposed to be down on them. But I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid until it actually happens. I wish Kawhi well. I wish the Clippers well. Nothing against that team organization. I think they are a bunch of professionals there who are trying to get it right. But I'm just like, there's something with the juju there that doesn't mix in a way that trends them into a championship level team, or a team that you can really count on when the chips are down. So let's see how long Kawhi stays healthy for this time, and whether or not it leads to significant success in terms of the climbs in the Western Conference, and ultimately, a true chance at an NBA championship.
I wish we had, what was the device that they had in Marvel, where they could basically jump into the quantum realm, and they can travel back in time or to a certain area and stuff. Because I would have loved to have seen a Harden Kawhi combination some 6 years ago. I would have loved to have seen what that would have looked like. You know what I'm saying? Prime Kawhi and prime Harden on the same team. I have to write that down. Like, what would happen if we went back on the time machine and asked, had these two dudes teamed up, what that would have looked like, against what the NBA either currently looks like, or what that would have looked like at that particular time frame. Because to me, that's what I feel like is just absolutely missing. And we've talked about this show. I think people really just continue to keep overlooking the fact that, a player just, after going through what they've been through, just comes back and just becomes who they are. There's only so many players that actually get to do that. It's a very small percentage. They're like the 1%ers. You know what I'm saying?
They are two steps above what I think. Remember when Karl Malone and Steve Nash and all those guys joined that Lakers team? It was like, oh, snap. You know what I mean? It was just kind of way past the proverbial prime. We're not way past that. So and this Clippers team is doing better than that Lakers team did, with that collection of proverbial talent. But it does seem to be a little bit too late for the unification of these Hall of Famers.
I just don't think that anybody, look, everyone respects James Harden, and respect and kudos to James Harden. I don't think people really recognize it. He's been a durable player for that Los Angeles Clippers team, regardless if he's doing it for the money or not. He's been reliable, and that's something that you can't make the same argument for even the star players they've had over the last few years.
Sure.
He's been there. You know what I'm saying? And I think where we get to we get caught up in all of this is we'd love to see that same kind of effort, so to speak, from Kawhi. Maybe it's just not there. You know what I'm saying? It's just not there. That doesn't mean that as a team, they can't be successful. They still can't, be competitive and still, go up against the better competition. But to your point, the realism is, people are talking about championship aspirations, and it's only predicated if, say, that one person comes back, or if they have their 2-star players on the floor at the same time. It just doesn't work that way, man. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, they're going to try to load manage their way into a deep playoff run, and I think that's the first step. We can't even be talking about championships. Can we get out of the first round? With a healthy Kawhi, and let's have a conversation after that. So
yeah, absolutely. Great show. You know what I'm saying? Look how quickly we flew back on that one. You know what I'm saying? Got a lot of juicy content to drop for our peoples, our listeners, and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. Nice way to start off the new year.
Yep. Happy 2025 to all of our fans and listeners, and keep rocking with us here on our journey throughout the NBA ethos. And this is going to be a wild one leading up to the trade deadline here in just about 4 or 5 weeks. I'm excited, and I'm eager to kind of see how things trend and what direction that goes to in both conferences, and for many of the teams that we discuss here on today's show.
Yeah, man. Shout outs to to Jimmy B and his his entourage and his peoples, man. They've now made the trade deadline a very interesting, as if it wasn't interesting enough. You know what I'm saying? They've definitely managed to help shake things up even more now. So
yes, absolutely. Significant piece.
Absolutely. Once again, thank you for everybody joining us. You know what I'm saying? Whether you're on YouTube or listening to us on your respective podcasting platforms. For the Baseline, Callie Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. We'll catch up with you next time.